we're there to support the clients. That's basically what the service is built on. And who needs more help, right? Within the clientele, right? And so we've kind of refined, like, how do we run our accountability systems? Are we actually coaching them and giving them the extra details around like what they need to drive forward and get results? And just like, again, even if it's just like social support, all
Right.
those different things.
Casey Kelley, what's up, buddy?
Yo, Rick, what's up, buddy?
Not much. What's up with you? What are you doing here, by the way?
Back down for another training week.
I know.
Round
All the way
number
from,
2.
Butte, Montana.
Yes, indeed. Well,
You're missing some good weather right now.
Oh, beautiful.
You're missing the only good weather of the year in Butte, Montana.
tell me about it. Yeah, it's it was a bummer. Yep, we've been sitting in the 50s and 60s. Finally got a nice week. Going to take the kids to the pool and then see you later.
That's right.
Yeah, so here in the sweltering heat of Georgia, but I enjoy it. I like the hot weather.
Yeah.
In fact, I've tried to convince the family to pick up and move to Phoenix, but I'm losing that battle.
Phoenix is like a whole nother level. That's like nuclear hot.
Yeah, my sister's in Glendale. 116 degrees, I think, this week.
Yeah, that's
So
a bit much. That's a bit much.
I like to dream, but it ain't happening. So
We're going to chop it up here in a minute, but do you have a dad joke?
yeah, I do, and not because I was getting them from my kids. I actually had to look these up. But in the spirit of fitness, which days are the strongest?
I'm already laughing. I don't know. What?
Saturday and Sunday. The rest are weekdays.
Oh,
Ba-dum-bum.
that's actually not bad. That's actually not bad. I had to look mine up too. So this is just a public announcement to the person that stole my running shoes and my high vis jacket. You can run, but you can't hide. Get it?
Oh, that's terrible.
You're like, that's so bad.
Cringeworthy.
Oh, it's so cringeworthy. That's what makes it good. You're welcome,
sure.
everyone. You're welcome. That's a good one. That's a really good one. Yeah, I've had a couple good ones lately, I have to say. I pick on Matt because Matt will bring one up that somebody else has told. And then I actually told the same one, like I skipped a week and told the same one that I told a couple weeks ago. So I'm like, I told my own joke again.
Yeah, you can repeat things, I think. Matt's kind of a walking dad joke, I think.
Yeah, he is.
Isn't he?
Yeah,
Seems
basically.
like it. Seems
Yeah,
like it.
pretty
I've
much.
been around him all week, so it's like,
Yeah. You're like, I get it.
All right, I got you.
Well, let's talk. So, for those of you that I've had Casey on the podcast before, we talked about this topic that it's kind of a sensitive topic for me. And the topic is what we call semi-absentee ownership, which is what a lot of people get into franchising under this idea that you can be an absentee owner. And an absentee owner would be like you don't have to participate in the business at all. So we know that's not true. But then this other term pops up, which is a tweener, which is like semi-absentee. I just don't even like the word absentee because it's a business, right? And it needs some attention. But you're a unique guy in the sense that you are 3 hours from your current facility.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
And you're a top 5 performer in our system and have been for a long time because you've been in it for a while now. So let's just, for the listeners, like recreate the history, like maybe for you and I, and then also like how you got into Alloy and like what got you to this point. So just tell me your history. And I'm going to sneak over there and turn on your light because I forgot. But go ahead and start telling me.
Sure thing. Yeah. So, I mean, just to rewind, like, we had, I jumped out of the corporate world for my engineering career, jumped into fitness, had a good friend, mutual friend, Dan Kleckner up in Seattle, who started some businesses and, just having a passion for fitness. We saw kind of a gap in our local market and just thought like, hey man, this would be cool to do here. And so we did our own thing. Obviously took our lumps, had to figure everything, bootstrap from the ground up, like, building the place out, figuring out how to do the programming, how to hire. Like, so we had, kind of already a taste of fitness, if you will. And, we were looking to scale and, started, kind of doing that with our own brand, but just for one reason or another, it just wasn't the right opportunity. We couldn't find real estate and we kind of sidelined it. And then we all know what happened in 2020. That kind of like knocked everybody back and it was just like survival of the fittest at that point, right?
Right, yeah.
And so, fast forward, we kind of climbed out of that hole. People were getting back out in the public and the workouts facilities were starting to grow a little bit again and rebound. And at that time, obviously we knew that you were moving into franchising, right? And we thought, well, okay, is it easier to scale, something that we've built and our own ideas? And we've seen how like convoluted that can get pretty quickly just with like packaging, pricing, service offerings, like, it just gets messy. So it was like, all right, well, we know Alloy's been doing the licensed version for, several years at that point, maybe tens of years. And so it was like, okay, well, that just seems like a better, scale opportunity, especially if it's going to be 3 hours removed from our home.
Right.
Well, I should retract that. We were looking into active opportunities with you guys, and obviously there's only certain markets that will support this, right?
Certain income threshold,
certain
population
thresholds,
density, and
criteria, right? And where we were situated, rural Montana, like we didn't have one right in our immediate like arm's length of like an hour drive time to even set one up. So we were, kind of at a crossroads, and we, if you remember, we came back to you and we looked at Billings and thought, okay, this is like a secondary market, kind of borderline threshold. We think we can support it. We think it's a different, animal in the market, and there's enough, population density and income to like support at least, one of our lower pricing tiers to make this work. So we took a gamble, in 2021, obviously, and, kind of placed the bet on ourselves and obviously with you at Alloy, and move forward from there. And so, we opened in January of 2022, and, fast forward to today, we're 2.5 years in, and like you said, things are performing well. We've kind of seen ups and downs through all of that, peaks and valleys, and as with any startup or new business or just any business in general, you're going to have issues along the way, right? Whether that's staffing, client facing, or whatnot.
Of course, so. Yeah, but just normal stuff. I mean, still, and the thing that I love about you is you're the best example of that term that we shall not mention, semi-absentee, whisper, where you live for 3 hours from your facility, but you're still a top 5 performer. And, our history goes back to even me consulting with you guys. You were in this coaching group that we had at one point. So I knew you were a good operator, but it's a different skill set to manage something from afar. You basically you have to know, you have to look at the dashboards and look at the software and be able to pull the levers that you need to pull, right?
Yep.
In the business to make sure. And so you've been able to really do that. So I really want to dig into that today, because I think that's the aspiration of a lot of investor level folks that we have, is to be able to do that. I think you have to earn the right to do it over time, right?
Sure.
And you're the one who's done it from the start. And I should mention somewhere in there, he had a great director, a guy named Paul that we loved. He was awesome, young guy running your gym essentially 3 hours
to get
from
Paul
you.
Back. Yeah.
I mean, sure. Shoot, man, Paul's part of the family forever. Love it or not, Paul, if you're listening. And then, Paul wants to go back to his hometown near his family, which is Spokane. We looked for real estate there because you had proven that you could manage from afar. So we're like, hey, we'll definitely give this guy, because there's not going to be much near Butte anyway, right? So we're going to have to let it be remote, and you've already proven you could do it. Couldn't find anything in Spokane, so we pivoted to Denver. Sure. So you picked up 2 in Denver, which is what you're doing here today, right?
Yep.
To open those 2. So if I had to go back to what is it that, it's going to be a really open-ended question. What is it that you feel like is the key to being able to run your business and really pay attention to it from 3 hours away?
Well, I mean, like I said, I've got the engineering background, and almost to a fault, where I'm just looking at numbers over and over and over. I think my wife thinks I'm crazy. I'll just sit down and stare at spreadsheets for hours at a time,
right.
Start glitching out like Rain Man. But I think, obviously we know the targets that we need to hit, but more importantly, I think it's the people that are there to support that. You can't just do it with any old Joe Schmo that comes along, right? They have to be the right fit for the job. And I don't know if I'm super lucky or, how it's panned out, but we've, like you said, Paul's been a fantastic guy. Blake's great. We've got a couple dynamic coaches that are in there supporting him, and, they show up, they do their job, they're coachable, they have humility about them. There's so many different traits that they have. And, I don't know if I've accidentally found them or if
Oh, you ran the process. You ran best work data. You did all your stuff, and we have a lot of assets in place to do that. Mm-hmm. So you did run process, but I think it's a combination of the two. Sure. You know what I mean? Obviously you have to know which metrics to pay attention to, which we have dashboards and everything for that, right? And you analyze those well. And it's easy when you know what, essentially in its simplest, if you're not doing activities that either bring in new members, clients, or keep the ones you have. Everything else is wasted time.
Getting and keeping are the two
Getting
things.
And keeping, right? That's the business. And it's only 130-ish or so. I think you guys are up at 145 or so. So it's not rocket science. Everything else that's built, whether it's a system or a customer service thing or a surprisingly personable campaign, all that stuff is built for retention and or sales, right? It's all built for those 2 metrics. So if you know what to pay attention to, you can pay attention to those things. But I think it's a combination of also running process and finding the right people, but then also you still have to be the right leader. So you said something to me at one point that I thought was pretty profound. You said, was when Paul was there. I think it was when I was visiting you guys when we came out and shot that video. That was cold as crap, by the way. It was like
negative 4 below. That was a bad week.
4 below and blowing. Yeah. And I told you, I've never had a better steak than we had that night, though. Because you imagine pulling up in the parking lot. I could barely walk into the place because you're getting blown over, right?
Yeah.
It's just 40-mile-an-hour winds.
Why would anybody want to live there?
It's 4 below. No, I thought it was a beautiful place.
If you're listening, my wife, we got to move to Phoenix.
It was desolate, right? Like it just looked like it was on the surface of the moon or something. Anyway, I walk into the steakhouse. They got an open fire going, and it's like there's hardly anybody in there because it's a terrible night out. And man, we ate some good meat.
Oh, that was fantastic.
God, there's nothing better than a.
We had a rattlesnake, if you remember right.
Yeah,
rattlesnake and rabbit sausage or something crazy.
It was awesome. It was basically any kind of animal that could be eaten. We ate it that night.
Jake, the photographer.
Yeah, he's back for he'll be shooting conference and stuff for us this year. Anyway, just want to mention probably the best steak I've ever had. Not surprising that it was in Montana, of course,
for sure.
But you said something to me during that visit that I thought was pretty profound. I use it all the time. At the time, Paul was the director, and you said, "Listen, it's pretty simple. Paul serves the clients, and I serve Paul."
For sure.
So, do you want to explain that?
I mean, yeah, it's essentially like a culture of support, right? We're there to support the clients. That's basically what the service is built on, and we're always reinforcing that point, like in our conversations on weekly calls of like, all right, who needs more help, right, within the clientele, right? And so we've kind of refined like how do we run our accountability systems? Are we actually coaching them and giving them the extra details around like what they need to drive forward and get results, and just like, again, even if it's just like social support, all those different things. So obviously the coaches and the team are there to support the clients, but then if you step up a layer from that, I'm there to support, Blake with whatever he needs, right? So it's like, hey man, I need, more marketing resources, or I need, some different systems or plays or coaching or whatever that might be. Like, obviously Blake was kind of new to his role. Like he was in with as a head coach for us and stepped up into that director role. So like he needed a lot in terms of support on like, just like, how do I do sales? You know? So like we had to kind of go back to the beginning and listen to calls and just like, give him slight encouragement and positive reinforcement and maybe tips and advice on like how to make his calls better. And like, so you do have to, again, be there to guide and direct and lead. And, you're kind of in it together. It's not adversarial. I'm there to, help you be successful in your role. Right. And I think that we've got a good understanding and relationship with one another. Right. We sign off on every call, just like, hey man, I appreciate you. I just got off the call with him 15 minutes ago, and he's kicking butt in his role. I want to make sure that he's happy and supported and taken care of.
I mean, that's really it. I mean, it's at the highest level. Like I think that attitude maybe, or that lens on your relationship probably manifests itself in a million ways. I mean, you mentioned one, even the way you exit a phone call is like, I appreciate you, right? But there's probably a million little opportunities to have that type of lens on your relationship with the folks that are on the front line servicing the customer, right? And I think we've talked about before an accountability sort of trickle down, but I also think it's like from a care trickle down, right? Like if you care about your director in a way and he knows that you're there to support him and you appreciate him, he's going to treat the coaches that way, and he and the client and the coaches are going to treat the clients that way.
100%.
Right.
Yep.
So it's like you're leading by example, not only for the actual business, but for how they should treat the customer as well.
Well, and everybody wins in that sort of environment, right? Everybody's getting what they want out of the relationship.
Well, including you. I think like, as a leader, it's like a very fulfilling way to lead is to serve, right?
Sure.
Like if you're just leading, it's all about you and you're a tyrant and you lead with a big heavy stick. It's like, who wants to be that guy? There's like this constant like friction.
100%. Yeah, I hear stories of that, and I almost kind of cringe. I'm like, I just can't imagine, how people work in environments like that. We've been talking about all of our backgrounds and histories with the other people in training, and like there's certain just like shady moves that happen in businesses, and you're like, oh man, that's just like not the right way to go about it. So at the end of the day, it's treating people right and well, and I think, like I said, it manifests itself in how things operate.
Yeah, we even say that from like franchise level. It's a strange relationship between franchisee and franchise. It's kind of like we want to keep some guardrails up. You guys are trying to be entrepreneurs, but with guardrails. Mm-hmm. So it's like this dance of like, we're supporting you. And then like, you're like, I need this. And we're like, okay, we need you to do that. And it's like a push and pull. But if we can do that through the lens of like being kind and like trying to help, then if we can lead you guys that way the best we can, you guys will hopefully absorb some of that. You already had it, but you know what I mean? Like somebody's new to entrepreneurship, then they can reflect that again to their team, which will be reflected to the client. So it's really a pass through, I think, all the way down, from the brand all the way down to the consumer, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, fully agree.
So what would you tell somebody whose aspirations are to own multiple facilities, because you're just getting into that? So I know you haven't done it yet, but I promise you the way that you've run your single facility is the formula for running multiple facilities, because it just means not as much touch in each one. You can't go in there and slap backs and kiss babies every day, right? And look in the whites of the eyes of the customers always. So like, what if you had a couple of things to share that are key, whether it be tracking numbers or meeting cadence, or like what's some things that you do that you think are really helpful?
Yeah, I think you really just hit the nail on the head, that you do have to have the dashboards. You have to understand the numbers, and you have to know the trends and the levers to pull in the business when things are going off the rails or off track.
When you catch them early enough, they don't, right? You just course correct.
You can kind of forecast a little bit, right? Like we look at sales velocity, right? How many sales are we making on per month on average, right? And if you match that with retention, you can kind of know where you're going to end up, right? There's a certain maximum number of members where your acquisition meets your retention, and then you're not going to grow beyond that, right? And then it goes up into, book, call, show, there's 1,000 different numbers that we're looking at, but, paying attention to that is obviously a key element. And then, I think the real crux move is just, it's like I said, hiring the right people. So it's like, how can we find people to duplicate that are good operators and good employees, just like the ones that we have today. So it's like cracking the code on how do you interview them, how do you find them, how do you filter through the right ones. And we've as business owners been through good hires and bad hires, right? And it's like, if you make a bad one, it hurts, and it hurts for a while, but it's not the end of the world, but it does certainly make things harder. So how can we get off on the right foot? How can we identify those people? I think that's really the kind of limiting factor or challenge to scaling, because the programming itself, right? We know how that works. The lease, okay, we can find locations. We know how to do that. It's just sometimes it takes a little longer and more, and construction costs go up. Now, whatever. It's
the people are the crux move. I mean, if somebody asks me, and I'll be like, there's two ways you can screw this up. You can put it in the wrong location. Now you can remove that, because we're not going to let you. I say this lately on a lot of podcasts, not defensively, but just to let people know, there's a pretty hefty fee, a franchise fee up front. We make little money on that. I mean, there's not much meat on the bone for us typically on that.
Right.
So our only moneymaker ultimately is to get you guys open and making money, because that's how we make money, right? It's royalties. That's it. And so we're as aligned as we can get. So we're not going to let you put it in a bad spot, right? And we also look at the business model. We don't want you to get a bad lease, right? So if you remove that, is like, okay, we're not going to let you put it in a terrible area. Great. The next thing is people, and that's it. Like, that is the crux move, your ability to attract, hire, and lead the good people. That's
and showing them a way forward and some opportunity in it too.
Yeah. I think that's the advantage of multi-club ownership.
That's why we want to scale, so that we can provide those opportunities. It's like, if we're just going to sit on one or two, it's like, that you can't really move people up and around too much. Like, if you want to promote a head coach into a director role, or a director role into like sort of a regional type of operator or manager, when you hit a certain level of scale, you can spread resources around. It just makes more sense, right?
Right.
But
yeah, for sure, I agree, and I think that's your idea, right? Like, so what's next for you? Like, ultimately, where would you like to end up with this thing?
Oh man, that's always a floating target. It depends on the hour that you ask me,
right?
And how stressed I am at the moment.
Yep.
I'm getting out of this thing. I'm selling right now. I'm out of here.
Right.
And then 5 minutes later, let's open 50 of them. So.
That's a day in the life of
a day in the life of, right? It's like 100%. So. At this point, obviously, we've got the two in front of us, and we're not like, we don't want to get too far in front of ourselves where we're like, all right, let's, we're going to get 20 of these things. It's like, that's kind of a cool little, dim vision out in the distance that you can kind of see, and maybe the slight direction we're heading. But at this point, it's like, we got two that we need to zero in and focus on after we've kind of like gotten those ramped up. Healthy, we're comfortable, we're confident, we feel good about how we're staffing these things and how we're finding people. great. Let's move on the next 2 or 3. Right. And sort of this piecewise approach. And then it's like, maybe if you've hit a certain like snowball effect, then you can, do like our friend Joe's doing in New Jersey, where he's got like, 5 clubs open this year. It's like, okay, he seems to have a good formula and a good structure. And, that's sort of the entrepreneurial process is figuring out the equations behind these things and what works, and how you want to staff it and how you want to pay people and compensate them. And,
and it changes as the economies of scale are a thing. You get to, people have asked, like, at what point do I hire like a regional? I'm like, just for me personally, it depends on how much margin, right? Because you can hire a regional whenever you want.
Sure.
But for me, it would probably be around 6. More than like, it depends on how much margin you want to pull out of the business, right? But like with 6 cash flowing pretty well, you could afford a really good regional. Then you can put a little distance, right? You meet with the regional, and the regional coaches the directors, right?
Yeah.
And could probably take up to 12 or so. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, because that's something that obviously that's each individual business owner has to put together their plan for how they're going to manage multiples. And we've got plenty of people that have sites on multiples. We have a group out of Atlanta that's got 400 Hilton hotels and 170 massage MDs. I mean, they know how to scale,
that's
right?
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like groups like that probably have a pretty good formula already.
Sure.
But I'm sure it'll be somewhat specific to our brand. So it'll be interesting to see what you guys do as you get multiples.
Yeah. Right? We're kind of the ma and pa type of shop, owner that's trying to scale, and figure this out. But I think it does help to at least have an initial vision to be able to paint for your team.
Yeah,
if they want growth opportunities and scale.
Yeah. Well, I know I was talking to John Farkas, and he's like, look, he even built, because, Alicia does all our graphics work, his wife. She's awesome.
Right.
And so she crafted like a vision sheet for him that he gives to all new employees, because he's going into 4 just in St. Louis, right? And 4 in a cluster like that's nice. And so that's enough to like scale, and there's opportunity there. So he's like, I'm attracting much better qualified individuals with a vision. To your point, right? It's kind of like, hey, there's 4 coming. I'll probably go to another state and collaborate. You guys have talked about, let's team up. Maybe we go somewhere else. And so there's some really interesting opportunities for collaboration like that. And it will allow you, it's more attractive to more dynamic people to put on the team for sure.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's the way the conversation goes with our director candidates every time. It's like, all right, well, where's this going to lead?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that if an A player is perfectly content just sitting in one seat forever and always.
Right. I agree. It's funny when I'll talk to people that are in their one-off gym. They do great. That's all they want to do. I love it. And they're like so upset because the person they have that's really dynamic has been there for 7 years, and now they're leaving. You're like, what am I going to do? I'm like, you should expect that person to leave. If they're really good, and you're in their growth trajectory is like one facility, there's nowhere for them to go. Of course they're going to leave. You should almost expect it. And you should be high-fiving them when they leave, because it's like,
or maybe you can even set up a structure where they can take some minority ownership.
Right. Yeah. Right? If you want to be out of it.
They take over that club.
Yep.
Or a piece of it, right? Like that in itself is also an opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. It just depends on the goal of the owner. So what about you personally? So this thing goes perfectly 10 years from now. What does it look like for you? You're living in Scottsdale. We got that.
Yeah. Yeah, we're poolside by now.
That's right.
It's funny. No, like I said, so yeah, 10 years. Let's just paint it and say like, okay, 1 per year for the first, 3 to 4 years,
right.
And then cool, we're comfortable with that. Maybe 2 to 3 for the next few, and if we really crack the code, then yeah, I mean whatever's territorially available and where we feel comfortable going into, like okay, great, let's get between 10 and 20 of these things and build kind of a small empire. Now, I don't think, I'm ever going to be up 100, 200 of these things, but, you never know. It's going to be a moving target. And I think it's going to we're going to keep changing our trajectory based on like what we've done. Right. Like I said, we got the first one set up. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, but we've got a bench. We've seen it operate. We're comfortable with it. Now we're moving on to that next phase. Cool. Getting something a little bit further away, new market.
I think each phase is a different skill set for you as well.
Yeah.
I talked a lot about this. I had Mark on the podcast, and he was saying one reason I got into franchising is because there's a skill set that I don't have, and he likes to learn. So he's like, I'm challenged, right, to like, as he said, the one gym in the coaching group, right? The Business for Unicorns, and then like Mark Fisher Fitness. And he's like, all right, so now I'm doing a different thing and I want to scale it. And it's way far. It's an hour and a half drive from where I am. And so like, that's a different skill set, right? Like that's one that you've mastered. Okay, great. But then now there's multiples, right? So it's like, that's a skill set. So I think it's an opportunity for you as an entrepreneur to keep growing, right?
For sure.
And and if you're an entrepreneur, you enjoy that. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you're risk tolerant, right? You have to be.
Oh, you have to be.
You have to be risk tolerant. So you got to be pretty resilient, and you're also up for challenges and learning. And I think you're a different owner with one than you will be with 3, than you will be with 10. And if you have 100, that's a whole different ballgame, right?
Yeah, it's a whole different level of team and support and staffing.
Yeah, and then you have your own call center for sales, and there's all these things you can build around that, right? Like a lot of these big franchisees of other brands, they'll have like their own marketing company, and like they do all these crazy things internally, because it's like, geez, they've got 170 clubs to take care of, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting, right? Like there's like all these like exciting possibilities in the future of like, all right, where can this thing go? Whereas, well,
the good news is we're growing. So like, as the rising tide raises all ships kind of idea. So the value of your investment goes up as we grow. Right. And so we're learning too, putting more assets in place. So it's like, I love it. It's just so much fun to have like people that I was friends with before we did this doing well in the brand. It's like, it makes you feel really good. I mean, there's times when I look over there and it's like all these guys that I've been hanging out with for years that are in the industry, and it's just like, feels so freaking good. Like, I don't have many of those days, because usually I'm just like, suck it up, got to do better. Every now and then I'll look over, I'm like, this is pretty cool.
Moments of brightness.
This is one of those weeks for sure.
Yeah, definitely. No, there's a great dynamic group, and they're all good people, all high level operators. And it's been fun to talk shop and just kind of see what everybody's ideas and vision are, and cross share knowledge. And I think that's the other part of it too. Being a part of the system is like, jumping on the phone or emailing each other and like, all right, hey, what are you doing over there? What's your idea on this? Like, when
you're moving into Denver, which has like, there's another guy here, Kale, who's, he was on the podcast a few times ago, but he's, tons of franchising experience. He built every process for any time when they had hardly any, and left at 4,000 and something, right?
Wow.
You've got, the orthopedic surgeon there. You got Kurt and his wife. You've got...
Sound like great people.
Yeah, really good people in the market. So, like, you guys can get together and do some awesome stuff, I think.
Yeah. It's, all in the same area. And as people start to see them on more corners, I think it'll be a little bit more recognized in the area. Like, we're going in as, like, the first to a new market, right?
Right,
so it's like, what the hell's Alloy?
Well, you and Kale go in the same time, right? Basically pre-sale same time.
So they see 2 kind of popping up. They're like, oh, wow, this is kind of interesting, right?
Love it.
Same thing when you see like the crumble cookie, you know what I mean?
It's exactly. I hope we'll do better than that long term.
Oh, geez.
Have you heard about some of the other stuff? I mean, we haven't talked about this. Like in franchising, there's some funky stuff going on with fitness. Like with some of the other brands are just, having some interesting things. So time will tell whether that like hurts us, because it could make the consumer... It could scare the consumer off of fitness franchising overall, or it could be like there's just less people looking at the brands that are.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't heard anything about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about it offline, because I don't want to throw shade where it might even be appropriate. Right? I might be wrong. Well, look, man, appreciate you coming on. I'm psyched that you're going finally getting another location. I know we've been holding on for this for a while. We waited for Washington for like a year, right?
Oh, geez.
And they finally came through, and then Spokane turned out to be kind of a dud. So I'm glad we're in Denver now. It's a great market. I think you're going to do well.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Yeah, it's been a journey so far, and like I said, I feel like we're still just getting started with things. And
me too. We'll have you back when you're back
rolling.
Club number 3, and then we'll talk about what it's like to own 2 remote markets.
It might be a different story. I might have more gray hair.
Yeah, Casey will be gray and really out of shape. No, you just sit at home and work out all day. Isn't that what you do when you own a gym? You just work. You just work out all day every day.
We did have a talk about that the other day. I said when I was actually like inside and owning my own facility, I was like, the last thing I want to do was work out.
Right. It is a miss. What's funny though, on the investor level, I've been surprised at how many, and most of our franchisees don't come from fitness background, which is good, and so like they're super excited to be in this, what to them is the super sexy business that you and I, we kind of forget how cool it is to do what we do, because we've been doing it forever, so you take it for granted. These folks are like, oh my God, I'm changing lives, and you feel that energy. It's great. It's kind of like when you bring on a brand new like intern in your business, and they're so excited. It actually excites you again, right?
Yeah.
So like they're exciting me about the thing we do, because they're so stoked to do it. But there's been a lot of people that are like, that they almost kind of whisper it like it's a shame. They're like, I hate to admit it, but like, one of the reasons I want to get into this franchise is because it's going to make me stay in shape.
I can work
Because I don't
out.
want to be playing golf with my buddies saying I own
shit.
a fitness franchise and look like I'm really out of shape. I'm like, hey man, whatever it takes.
Oh man, it's like the auto mechanic who drives the junky car because the last thing he wants to do is go home and fix his own thing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
exactly.
It's like, I need a break from this place. I'm gonna go home.
That's right. All right, well, listen, man, appreciate you being on. I think we're gonna kill it in Denver, and we'll have you back home when you come out for Club 3.
Sounds great, buddy.
All right,
Appreciate
buddy.
you.
Peace.
Thanks.